was such a big guy that he had weapons. He would buy swords, he'd buy battle axes, and in one battle he would have to have 3 or 4 swords because he would fight so hard he would break the swords. He would break the battle axes. So he heard about a famous swordsmith who had a shop in a village. He went to the swordsmith's shop and he tried all of the swords in the shop and he beat them on the walls and stuff, and he broke every sword in that man's shop, which made the guy really mad because this is a lot of valuable stuff that he's just destroyed testing it in his shop, and he didn't buy anything, which made him even madder because you've had all this work and all your stuff is now broken. But you can't really have an argument with a guy who's like 6'8" and 400 pounds and famous for killing people. You know, it's like you don't want to get that guy mad at you. So he made him a deal. He said, "Come back in a month, and if I have a sword that you can't break, you'll have to pay for all the stuff you broke in the shop plus the new sword." And the guy laughed at him and said, "Okay, I'll come back in a month, and if you've got a sword, I'll pay for everything." So what the guy did is he took the broken swords and he filed them into dust, filed them into filings. They just had filings. And he mixed them up with grain, and he took them outside in the yard and he fed him to his ducks. His ducks ate the iron dust along with the grain, and he penned the ducks up, and the ducks shit out the iron filings and the duck droppings. He shoveled them all together and he put them in his fire, and he baked them, and took all that stuff and he welded it all together. He drew it out into rods, twisted it together, and made swords out of it. Okay? Guy came back a month later and he couldn't break the sword. He had to pay for all of this. Now this is in the saga, and for 1,500 years, everybody who looked at that just said, "Man, that's really weird. Where do people get these ideas?" You know? Till Daryl Meyer in Carbondale, Illinois, who's a famous swordsmith, said, "You know, maybe it's not crazy, because there's a lot of urea and ammonia in waterfowl droppings." Okay, if you've ever smelled duck and goose droppings, it's got a lot of ammonia and urea in it. He said, okay, if you file it really small, there's a lot of surface area, so it can absorb the urea and nitride very easily into the surface of all these little grains. So Daryl actually did it. He took a piece of wrought iron, he made about 2 or 3 pounds of filings, got a bunch of duck droppings, put it in there, and he actually made a pretty decent sword that way. So, you know, and the reason people didn't do that later on is the metallurgy kept getting better. 1,500 years ago, it was hard to make good steel, but as the technology got better, you didn't need to have the ducks involved. You could do it other ways. It was a lot easier and less messy. But, you know, whenever you read these weird stories about early metallurgy, some of them might not really be just stories. And some of this stuff actually works. But that's why Mr. Coe's, we were talking about case hardening, casing it. Well, they have a modern compound called caseinate that's basically a urea compound. You case harden parts by doing just that. And you can do the same thing with duck droppings. So, you know, it's still a process that's used. But anyway, so I'm going to find the center of that ball and make a cut about 2 inches long. There's a taper, a wedge on these things, so if this vise gets loose, you can tighten the vise up so it doesn't wobble around. So you get to do something cool. We've got a split. This chisel goes there. Good vise. Have to encourage the tools every now and then. If the tools don't feel like you really want to work with them, they'll rebel. It's not just robots that get angry and destroy the world.
So the dogs is tank runs out, it's rebelling.
It's just tired. It doesn't want to work anymore. And when your tractor decides not to start, it knows that you want it to work. You just it's on straight. You
horses run away. They don't want to time in the way, just move me.
I am. That gets a little further out of the way. Of course, you can always walk sideways a little bit. The other thing about fullers is that they will allow you to take that sharp corner out if you want to make more of a radius in there. So it's another opportunity to play with a tool. You get a different tool. I should follow the names. Fullers are things that are make negative impressions. They are a positive tool that makes a negative impression. A swage is something that is a negative that makes a positive thing. If you wanted to make a rod or an end, it's like that. So fullers are the negative, the positive and negative of swages.
And that's the swage block, correct?
And that's why that's a swage block, because it has depressions that allow you to make shapes.
Link up there.
But you also have, that's a H.R.E, but it's also a fuller. That's a fuller H.R.E. And when you see things like hammers, you see how there's a transition from this square to this octagon? That was the arm of the fuller. You had that fuller, when you're working on a bar, it broke the corner so that you could draw that out without having to get it so close to the anvil, and you make nice, neat transitions. So the fullers mark and break corners, things like that. So you get, and you occasionally get other things, but nomenclature problems, you know, it's always that if you don't know the name of something, it's hard to know what it does. Notice how things change over time. One of my other favorite stories is warden. How do we get wardens running prisons? Okay. You know what the original meaning of ward is?
Someone you are responsible for.
Nope. That's a secondary meaning. The original meaning of ward, or to ward, is to avoid or block. Like you ward off evil. You ward off a blow. So you're preventing something from happening. You're blocking an action. Is to ward off something. Now, when they started making locks, they put little pieces of metal in. If you've ever wondered why an old-fashioned key has little cuts in the flag, the part that sticks out?
That's the wards.
The wards are the part of the lock which block. That's what, again, warding is to block. So a warden blocks the escape of prisoners. He is warding off their escape, and he's also got the keys which have wards. So the warden is the guy with the keys. And you get to be a ward, like Robin is Batman's ward, because he is underage or incompetent. I'm never sure which was Robin's, whether it's because he's too young or he's incompetent. Being crazy can make it.
Can it be both?
It could be both. You can't be underage and crazy to be a ward.
It could be like me.
But it's the same thing. To be a ward of somebody is you are blocked from your own freedom. You are a ward because you are not allowed to be free. Because I like playing with this fuller. Tap a little bit. And now I've made a nice little radius in there. You see that sort of crotch. Now what you want to do after that is work each time I'm just evening it out because we have a beveled side because of the chisel cut. It's not square, so we go slowly at a lower temperature, and it just knocks down that bevel from the chisel cut. If we just started hitting it really hard, it would twist out of the way because it's not flat on that side. Comes out of the forge after you've worked a while. See, and what you're doing is you're making it actually thicker and narrower. So we're going for almost a square cross section. And I'm not trying to hit this very hard because these are thin enough sections that if you hit them really hard, they're going to fold and twist. Instead of upsetting, you'll get something that's kind of like a potato chip that's squeezed shut, which is not useful for a fork. Tell me, does this mean you're going to get some ducks?
Yes. How many would you like?
I'm not in the market for ducks.
We have a pond full in that house. I'm gonna have to try it sometime.
Urea ammonia compound. Isn't that just a nice way of saying bird piss?
Yeah,
That does sound like a little piss, doesn't it?
urea and ammonia, yeah, that's basically where a lot of this stuff comes from. Urea and ammonia all have nitrogen, and case hardening is a nitriding operation as opposed to harperizing.
Looks like a lizard tongue.
Yes. All of the lizards I hang out with.
I wish my parents would let me down a lizard or a snake. Spiders take care of the ants. Snakes take care of the spiders.
And the gorillas eat the snakes, and then they freeze to death in the winter.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember that. The ecological lessons of The Simpsons. Of course, these are probably not the same length. But we have an answer to that. Maybe.
Looks like a shooting squad. You put your barrel of the gun on the Y, and you sit here and
You could probably make a case for that. Alright, we don't need to get into that. Over here. than the other.
I think it looks cool.
It's only double work. But because we're excessive, compulsive, and overly neat, tap it, you stick it in the vise. Break it off.
We're gonna shape the one.
We'll make them look like they belong together. Now, one of the problems, because this is a big, thick animal, is most animals have a heel. That's the other thing, is this is the heel of the animal, and this is the cutting table, the horn, the face. It's a little hard to work on an animal this big, small stuff, because you can't really get also when you can use Mr. File. Now, if you're really compulsive and you're annoyed by that thing not being quite right, you can always go in there with a filler.
We got a barbecue fork, a marshmallow fork.
Yeah. Something for
Some aggressively large marshmallows.
Well, we had ones the other day on a barbecue that were this big. That we got from Costco in Frederick.
who knows? They might be Martian marshmallows.
They could be.
Could be Martians. And you can file the little point.